Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and try this because what I'm seeing on my screen is not what I'm supposed to be seeing, but according to everything else, this is going ahead and posting, and I'm out there. So we'll go ahead and do this. Welcome to Bible Study. I'm Mike Carey, pastor of the First United Methodist Church in Nevada, Iowa. And you'll see one posting of this already, which is a false alarm because I didn't think it's not doing what it's normally supposed to be doing as far as the what I'm seeing on my screen and everything. So I apologize for that, and I don't know exactly why it's doing what it's doing, but it's doing weird things here, and we'll figure it out eventually. But we're going to go ahead and continue with our study of the book of Luke, Luke chapter 6, the first 5 verses. And on this December 15th, when we're getting ready for a hellacious storm that's supposed to be going through in a couple of hours. So stay safe, stay under cover. And Luke chapter 6, verse 1 through 5. One Sabbath day, Jesus happened to be going through the fields, wheat fields, and his disciples were plucking ears of wheat and rubbing them in their hands and eating them. Now some of the Pharisees said, "Why are you doing what is illegal to do on the Sabbath?" And Jesus answered, "Have you not read what David did when he and his comrades were hungry? How he went into the house of God and took the loaves of the presence and ate them and gave them to his comrades, although it is not legal for any but the priest to eat them. And the Son of Man said to them, the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." Now, this is a situation where Luke now is covering the opposition that is starting up against Jesus, and the Pharisees are kind of keeping an eye on him. They're looking for an opportunity to uh, accuse him of some wrongdoing so they can be justified in taking some sort of action against Jesus. And this is a situation where ultimately Jesus is going to be accused and convicted of being a lawbreaker, a Sabbath breaker. Now, you need to remember that Jewish law back then was not what we consider to be law nowadays. For them, keeping of the Sabbath was not just a trivial thing, it was a matter of life and death. Keeping of the law was extremely important, and Sabbath keeping especially was important to them and for them. And so they're walking now amongst there were our paths, little roads, lanes, if you will, that go between the various fields in those days. And it was lawful, if you were hungry, to take the heads of grain and rub them in your hands and eat the kernels. You could do that. That was legal. You couldn't grab a farmer's stuff and just haul it away, but you could take care of your hunger. That was legal. But this is the Sabbath, and what the Pharisees are accusing Jesus' disciples of doing is they are harvesting by picking the grain. They're threshing by rubbing it between their hands and blowing off the chaff, and that's against the law as far as that kind of work. And so we look at that and we go, "Oh, you got to be kidding me!" But no, this is serious stuff to the Pharisees, and so when they make this accusation, it's a serious accusation. We have to take the culture of the day into consideration. So Jesus turns around and he cites to them out of the book of 1 Samuel 21, where this is the situation where David is being chased by King Saul. Saul has murder in his heart, and David and his companions are basically have had to leave Jerusalem very quickly. And so Saul is going to be hot on his heels any minute. They hadn't had a chance to pack provisions or anything, and they're faint with hunger. They come there to where the tabernacle is, and the showbread is there. The showbread was high quality bread, wheat bread, which had been sifted 11 times, and it is baked daily, and it is put then on the gold table of the presence of God, which sits there on the north side of the tent of the meeting. And only the priests were allowed to eat it. Anybody else, it was, a terrible thing for them to take and eat of the showbread, or what was called the bread of the presence. Bread of the presence, and meaning the presence of God. But because David and his men were hungry, their physical need, superseded the idea that this bread was only for the priests. And so Jesus is saying, it's okay. David could take that, and it was all right. David's need takes precedent over all the other rules and regulations. The rabbis themselves would say in their teaching that the Sabbath is made for you and not you for the Sabbath. They knew that. And yet the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they would bend things around, and especially now, because they've got it into their hearts and their heads that they're going to do Jesus in. So they knew that scripture, because that scripture is in Leviticus 24. Why did they not understand it and apply it to Jesus? Well, first of all, they didn't approach the scripture with an open mind. You can know the scriptures inside and out, but if you come to the scripture trying to prove something instead of letting the scripture prove something to you, you've got it all backwards. You don't go to the scripture and say, listen, Lord, for your servant is speaking. You say, no, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. We are to listen for the voice of God. You also need to come to the scripture with a needy heart. You need to understand and admit and confess that I have a spiritual need. God can speak to me here in my moment of need and in my current situation, and I'm looking for God to speak to me. I come to the scripture with that expectation that God is going to speak to me, and that every time I read a particular scripture, I can read a scripture over 100 times, and the Lord can speak to me in 100 different ways. And so we need to understand it's called, the theology is the idea of illumination, that God opens my heart and my mind, illuminates it, so that I might understand the message that is there for me at that particular point in time in my life. So, but the Pharisees, they have it in their hearts and in their minds that Jesus is a lawbreaker, that Jesus is not somebody that they're going to put up with and tolerate. And so they have their minds made up. They're there to do him in. Now, I'm going to have to really cut this one short today, and I apologize for that. The computer is just not working the way it's supposed to. But we'll get it figured out, and we'll be back at it here. We'll pick up the story in Luke chapter 6, starting at verse 6, if you're following along, next time. And in the meantime, stay under cover. Storms are coming. Stay safe, and hope the Lord blesses you real good.